What is up, guys? It's Sky, and the hype is real for Battlefront 2. All the big YouTubers like Stone Mountain 64 and Jack Frags have been showing footage from E3 about Battlefront 2, and a lot of you guys may know that I played Battlefront last year. I enjoyed a ton of it. I know a lot of you guys are Battlefield pilots, and you might be interested in jumping in some of the starfighters in Battlefront 2 when it releases later this year. So I thought I'd take this time to break down some of the footage that I've seen of the piloting in Battlefront 2 and give you some perspective on what piloting was like in the original Battlefront. In the footage you see a game of Fighter Squadron that I jumped on the other day because I was getting a little bit hyped for Battlefront 2 and I felt like reliving some of the original Battlefront. I'm playing on the Imperial side, and I managed to pick up the hero token, pilot the Darth Vader TIE Advanced, and go on a 37-0 kill streak. For those of you that don't know, one of the biggest problems with piloting in the original Battlefront was a huge imbalance between the Imperial side and the Rebel side. Initially at launch, both the Rebel X-Wing and A-Wing had shields, while the Imperial TIE Fighter and TIE Interceptor got a speed boost. The problem is that the shield was infinitely more useful than the speed boost, and in matches of Fighter Squadron, it pretty much ended up with the Rebel side dominating the Imperials and then switching teams so that the other team could dominate as the Rebels again. Hopefully this imbalance is something that will be addressed in the upcoming Battlefront 2, and I have a feeling that it will be. Now, from watching what limited footage of piloting in Battlefront 2, I saw a video on Stone Mountain 64's channel. Some of the mechanics seem very similar. You still have the simplified arcade style flight controls. You don't have the roll and yaw axis. You just have the old school Star Fox style. You push in a direction and you turn that way. Now this was something that never bothered me, but some of the members of the community kind of swore by the old school pitch yaw and roll axis style of movement you see in more simulation flight games. Another mechanic that seems to have made its return is the Starfighter energy distribution system, whereas you have a meter on the screen that basically decides your speed, and if you're going fast, you go fast but you don't turn as tight and your blasters are weaker, but if you throttle down, you turn tighter but you don't go as fast and your blasters are stronger. This was really what was most unique about piloting in Battlefront. It kind of ignores physics, and speed is pretty much at the flip of a switch. And this is going to be the biggest transition for a player that's used to dogfighting in a game like Battlefield, or even a more of a simulation game like War Thunder. All in all, from what I could tell, a lot of the flight mechanics in Battlefront 2 will be very similar to the original Battlefront, for better or for worse. Now, unfortunately, Stone Mountain 64 is not the best pilot, and unfortunately, there really aren't that many good pilots, at least Battlefront pilots, on YouTube. But all this really goes back to the fact that there's not that much information for Battlefront pilots out there. So information on Battlefront 2 piloting is even more scarce, and a lot of this is my conjecture based on some limited footage I've seen. Now, from watching gameplay on Stone Mountain 64's channel, it seems that the lock-on targeting system has been done away with. For those of you that aren't familiar, the original Battlefront had a lock-on system for the ship's main cannons. This did make the main cannons a little more user-friendly. You didn't have to worry about leading your target. And it also resulted in some nuclear time to kill. Even mediocre pilots can line up on you when you're not looking, take you out in a split second. It seemed like with the lag that sometimes you were just insta-killed. This also further contributed, I think, to the imbalance between the Rebel ships and the Imperial ships, because Rebel ships could at least pop their shields and stay up. If you're flying Imperial side and you got blindsided, you're pretty much insta-killed. You really couldn't even react. So for better or for worse, I think that they scrapped that system in favor of a more old-school deflection-style dogfighting. Now, it seemed like there was a lead indicator on enemy ships showing you where to shoot. It's kind of like in War Thunder, I think. A little more skill-based than just lock-on cannons, but at the same time, a little bit of help for the casuals out there. Another thing I think that returned to the PC version of Battlefront 2 is the original Battlefront piloting controls, whereas you would turn by sliding your mouse to the edge of the screen, and it never worked in the original Battlefront, and it looks like the best option for you to pilot on PC in Battlefront 2 will be to plug in a controller. I tried for the life of me to get the mouse and keyboard controls to work in the original Battlefront, but I just couldn't do it. It's just too many disadvantages. It's so much easier to switch by sliding the thumbstick from one side to the other instead of dragging your mouse all the way across the screen. but I guess the arcade style controls don't really work that well with a mouse and keyboard. Now, a couple things that the original Battlefront got right about piloting in a video game. One, they made pilots very useful in Walker Assault, whereas the objective was to destroy the AT-AT walkers in the middle of the map, and one of the best sources of damage for the Rebels team came from the pilots. In Battlefield and Conquest and Operations, pilots are very useful. The attack plane can get droves and droves of infantry kills, but really it's hard for pilots to affect objectives in Battlefield. In Battlefront Walker Assault, it was really important for Rebel pilots to stay up, and ergo, it was very important for Imperial pilots to stay up and take down the Rebel pilots. Combine that with the absolute nuclear time to kill, and dogfighting was very important in Battlefront Walker Assault. Flying aircraft wasn't just about racking up huge KD by doing strafe runs. The thing about Battlefront fighters is that they were extremely maneuverable and very easy to maneuver due to the arcade style controls and the fact that speed was at the flip of a switch. It was really about getting out of your opponent's kill zone. And if you guys don't know, the kill zone in front, and from an aircraft perspective, is in front of the aircraft out to its maximum range, and it's conical. So the further away you are from your opponent, the wider the kill zone. That's because even if you aren't in your opponent's sights, they can still turn and shoot at you. To some point, you could kind of fly evasively and dodge your opponent's lock-on, but once you got in close quarters, you had your defensive maneuver. The Rebels also had the shields. The defensive maneuver was either a quick sidestep dodge or an Immelman style maneuver that let you turn your ship around. They can be used to switch, in a sense. It was the fastest way to turn your ship around, but they also had the benefit of breaking lock-ons. So it was mostly about having your defensive maneuver up so you can break a lock-on to try to get out of your opponent's kill zone. And then after that, things pretty much operated like a normal dogfight, but it became less about turning and more so about hooking. You would fly past your opponent, turn out of view, and then slow down to turn quickly, and then throttle up to fly away from your opponent, hopefully to an area that your opponent doesn't predict. Then you would turn around quickly again and fly back toward your opponent. Now, the minimap gave your opponent an indication as to where you were, and obviously you had an indication as to where your opponent is. So the only trickery involved was whether you were going to turn up or down, because obviously the minimap gives no indication of elevation. I guess you could say that in a sense this is very simplistic, very easy to grasp. Dogfights were essentially a hooking battle, whereas in Battlefield you're a lot more concerned with 360-degree space and controlling your speed. Or rather, I'll say managing your speed, because in Battlefront you controlled speed, but it really wasn't much to it. In Battlefield, there's a lot more involved with the plane physics. Now, dogfight mechanics in Battlefront were greatly simplified, but each of the ships handled very differently. It was important to know exactly how each ship handled, because you would have to handle matchups differently depending on what ship you were flying and what ship your opponent was flying. The X-Wing was the most maneuverable, turned the sharpest. The A-Wing was the fastest, but did not turn as sharp. The TIE Fighter was a good balance, while the TIE Interceptor was the slowest and turned the worst out of all the ships, surprisingly. They eventually gave the TIE Interceptor some interesting new abilities to kind of balance it out, but for a while it kind of added further to the imbalance between the Rebels and the Imperial ships. But the different handling characteristics between the ships really gave the dogfighting something unique. Whereas the A-Wing couldn't turn that sharply, but say for instance you switched and you flew all the way to the flight ceiling and your opponent didn't see it. The A-Wing was so fast that you could turn around and re-engage your opponent before they even knew what happened. Dogfighting aside, Battlefront definitely did a lot of interesting things with the fighters. They were integral to a lot of the new game modes and the DLCs. And of course, Battlefront had Fighter Squadron, which was a very popular mode, kind of like air superiority from BF3 and BF4. It was great for casual players that just wanted to jump in a fighter and have some fun. You could respawn quickly. There were AI ships flying around to shoot down if you weren't that good. And if you were good, you can challenge yourself to get a high amount of player kills, or to try to run the table and carry your team in a TIE Interceptor. A lot of the best pilots in the game took a lot of pride in being able to do that. It seemed to me that piloting was a lot more integral to Battlefront than it is in Battlefield. It seems like in Battlefield, they find every opportunity to nerf the planes or the jets and to buff anti-air capabilities, to the point where it's not even that much fun to fly in public matches anymore. I never felt it was like that in Battlefront, and that gets me a little bit excited for Battlefront 2. It definitely seems like it's a big step up from the original Battlefront, although I'm not one to believe in the hype train. I see a lot of people on the internet getting so hyped for all these trailers, but they're just trailers at the end of the day. I'm still gonna wait and see if the game is any good, but definitely has promise. It's funny how people were so hyped about the original Battlefront, and then a couple weeks in, they were quick to put it down. Even with Battlefield 1, I remember people were so hyped about it because they saw the green gas in that trailer with that music, the white stripes playing Seven Nation Army, and I saw all these internet comments, and I pretty much just rolled my eyes and thought, man, people were so susceptible to this stuff. And I kind of had the opposite reaction with the original Battlefront. People were so quick to put it down, but I actually enjoyed the crap out of it. And I remember going on the internet when the trailers for the Battlefield 1 came out, and I kept reminding people, don't forget about Battlefront. You guys were so hyped about Battlefront, and then come a couple weeks in, you were just quick to dismiss it and say it was too casual, that it lacked depth, and lo and behold, what happens? But at the end of the day, I'm enjoying Battlefield 1, and I enjoyed Battlefront. To be honest, I enjoyed Battlefront more than I'm enjoying Battlefield 1. Part of that may be due to the Star Wars nerd inside of me, but really when you get down to it, Battlefront may have been a better designed game than Battlefield 1. Maybe not at launch, but Battlefront got monthly patches since the get-go, and the devs seem like they really listened to the community. They made a lot of big changes, they added a lot of interesting stuff, and by the end of its life cycle, Battlefront turned into a pretty decent game. The thing that you have to realize about Battlefront is that it's not just a gun game, because the hero play was very integral. A couple of the modes in the DLC really revolved around hero play. The heroes were actually a resource for your team that you had to use wisely. You had to have good players in the hero positions to be able to win. And that was another really enjoyable aspect of the original Battlefront. Now if you're purely looking for a gun game, then this might not be for you, but really, if that's the case, then dice games may not really be for you, because dice games usually revolve around other things like vehicle play. If you're looking for a gun game, then Call of Duty World War II actually looks pretty decent. All in all, it might be a good year for multiplayer online shooters. I might jump in a couple rounds of Battlefront and do some piloting, do some dogfights. Maybe I'll do some breakdown videos for you guys to help you learn flying in Battlefront to get ready for Battlefront 2. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.